All right, cool. So I've hit record. I think this is uh, let's dive into this here. Let's really just explore this. Um, I like how let's take this time to just settle into here. Um, Keep breathing in. Sorry, keep breathing in. Feet flat on the floor. Let's start ourselves. Just take 3 deep cleansing breaths to just ground ourselves into this conversation. With each breath, we find ourselves just a little bit more securely, a little more grounded. Breath straight from the bottom of the soles of your feet into the depths of your belly. When you're ready, let's go ahead. We can come back. We can play. Um,
Yeah.
I appreciate being in conversation with you, Brooke. The just sharing about the different things around that have been flowing through my mind as well in different areas. And I think more than anything else, I'm here to jam with you. I think that
Mm-hmm.
said this is let's just create this place as a place for you to explore some of these things. I'm not bringing deep coaching, although it might show up. I just want to be someone that's in the conversation with you to help you explore some of these things and bring my curiosity on your behalf. And I'll be honest as well. I'm walking down my path, and it looks similar in different ways. So there's going to be some things that come up where I'm like, oh, I'm navigating this. This is how I'm going through, or even questions that I bring in. We're really just going to just kind of jam with each other. Are you good with that?
I love jamming with you.
All right, let's
You're
go
my
ahead.
like top 5 jam partners of life.
I take that is like high praise. I'm like, you take that like I was ready to go and I was like, wait a minute. Um, but I think you brought up a lot of different areas that all feel really important. And um, the thing that's coming for me, I want to talk about each of them. We can bring because they're all really concrete. Um, the thing that really stuck out for me was this element of the work that you're doing seems to be shifting, right? The work that you're doing seems to be shifting, and as what was going on for me was okay. The way my mind works is on what level does all the things that you're like that right now are
I
actually is that
know.
even mind
I
like
know
in
what it is.
yeah, what is
It's
it?
about it's about leadership.
Tell me more.
I knew where you were like that. I was like, "Yep, got it." And I wrote down leadership because the issues I see across like the things that are breaking my heart right now
Yeah.
um are caused by a lack of accountability and a lack of leadership. And when I think of leadership, it means service and calling, a belief that what I do matters and impacts others, and I'm responsible for that. Um, and also that I'm willing to rise to that challenge. Like, and I don't mean that it's not even just about me right now. I'm speaking about like leadership across those sectors, across like these issues I see happening. The key lack that is the same across all or possible lack that right now because I'm upset I'm seeing is a lack of leadership, which I'll repeat again so I get a kind of better idea of maybe what I think leadership is. It's like I'm seeing a lack of courage and bravery around speaking up. I think about people that like are whistleblowers. Like to me, that's like one of the best examples of leadership that someone can do, to be willing to put themselves on the line for something that they believe in that wasn't told to them to believe in. I think leadership can sometimes like fakely look like, oh, I followed or look like they're authentically expressing service, but what leaders can off leader people in leadership roles can often be doing is just following what they've been told to continue to propagate to the rest of us. So, the mask thing is related to that. Like, I feel, okay, so these places I go and I'm told to wear a mask, the person who's telling me that maybe hasn't had the time to think about or learn about, like, do they actually believe in the message that they're telling? Because we're just hearing it from up here, right? And that's not me saying we shouldn't wear masks. It's me going, that's really interesting that we're just willing to listen to something from up here. Whereas leaders of our own lives we would recognize our own sovereignty. So maybe there's that word is also across those things. Like, if we as humans stepped greater into our sovereignty, and this is, it's mirroring my own journey now, as I was saying, obviously, if we could step more deeply into our sovereignty, then we would be leaders of our own lives. And so many of the things that we allow government to do to us, or we allow the powers that be to dictate for us, we just wouldn't stand for them. Like, we just would be like, no, if I send my kid to public education, like, and you're going to feed them, like, do not feed them 100 milligrams of sugar before they even eat anything of nutritious value, right? Like, we'd just be like, hell no, I don't put up with that.
Yeah, I'm like, so there's a few different things in here that I just want to just make sure that we're calling out. One, with the few different definitions of leadership that came out for you. Really respected for just like taking the time to see, like, what does that actually mean? Because leadership is a word that's like thrown out in different ways, but for you, there's a specific portion that right now you're feeling like there's a deficit of. You also had a definition there around, no, it was actually the word sovereignty. I don't think there's a definition that came out there, but that seemed like it was an intentional word along the way. What is, like, when you said sovereignty of self and such, what does that mean to you? To make sure that I'm entering your world.
Yeah. So, like Viktor Frankl, when, as a psychiatrist who was in a concentration camp, and afterwards he created this like different psychiatric field or this like methodology called like logotherapy. And his whole thing, the book Man's Search for Meaning, his whole thing is like, if we have a meaning and a purpose, like, we can get through anything. But what he's specifically saying is that no matter what external situation is happening to us, no one can take away our mind. No one can steal from us our choice our ultimate choices, which is how we see things and how we show up. And to me, that is sovereignty. Like, wow, he lived in sovereignty, because even though he could see the injustice and was in, horrible conditions, was completely oppressed, he chose to see himself still as an empowered being at whatever level he was like able to get at that point. So that, to me, that's sovereignty. So we don't say, oh, nothing touches me, but there is a part of you that nothing touches. Maybe that's what it is, So it's not that like nothing's affecting me, but there is a part of me that is impossible to be affected. It's here. Hey, it's like, oh.
I'm feeling that. I mean, oftentimes people will talk about resilience. When you talk about that, it's me from that word. A lot of times people talk about resilience, and I actually have like a relationship to that word that is like, I'm not the biggest fan. I want it. Like, I think people should be resilient, but I'm like, oh, if we're making this concerted effort to be resilient, like, why are we stopping at just resilience?
Yeah.
If you get knocked down, let's get you back up, right? I'm like, why aren't we working on what would it take to be steadfast, so that when something comes your way, like, you aren't knocked down, but you're able to withstand, or be able to hold yours and be with that. I also think about like the anti-fragile, which is if you get knocked down, you come back and you're even stronger. But there's an element of being steadfast, like a tree, like rounded, rooted within that feels like, when you're talking about sovereignty, that's what that takes me to. That's how I feel it. This element of like, there can be whatever else comes, like, I am rooted enough. There's a part of me that is still rooted enough in me, in this, that is like immovable. And as long as that part is in place, then I can actually continue to move forward in my direction.
Yeah.
What does anything from when I say that?
Well, I mean, beautiful. I'm thinking about that Maya Angelou quote, where it's part of one of her poems, where she says, "I come as one, but I stand as 10,000." That was kind of that tree thing. You know, like maybe I'm just a part of the tree right now, but actually I have this whole root network and system, and I'm part of this lineage of millions of years of my treeness. But then the other piece, so that's like one thing. But then the other thing I was thinking is like, oh my God, what if we took a minute to imagine a world where everyone was in touch with that part of themselves? Like, wow. Okay. So that part that's like, I know I'm good. Like I'm a tree. I'm grounded. I'm rooted. I'm good. Wow. Just imagine what the world would be like. The first thing that I'm coming now is like, we wouldn't really have war because the politicians who like write war legislation wouldn't like jockey. Like they wouldn't be on Twitter like pissing each other off to the point that they would get to war. Like just like war wouldn't happen because you wouldn't need to like battle with anyone else to know you were good. You wouldn't, you know, that idea like a dick measuring contest. There wouldn't be any.
Keep going. Like there's an element of this. No, I'm so with you. You said the magic word, and I was like, oh, that's what this conversation is. Like it's about being in the space of imagining once again. It's about being in the space of like I've been doing more work to see more about like what is futuring. What is that actually?
Mm-hmm.
Like in conversations with me, I'm typically not trying to solve anyone's problems. The world that I look at, the world that I imagine on a regular basis, is a world where there's no longer any problems left to solve. Like that's where my mind goes. And so there's when you said that word imagine, I'm like, I think that like that feels like it. That feels
Mm-hmm.
like the place to start with here. Um,
Mm.
and to actually like not just say like imagine for a minute and then be done. It's like no, let's
Wow.
imagine. Let's actually take that in because otherwise, and this is important for me. Like I know for me, I am dedicated now to like this. Like I've been dedicated to life changing conversations, and now like my new like standard is like practicing world changing conversations. I
Mm.
can't have
Oh,
yeah. It's a
wow.
big thing for me right
That's
now.
powerful.
Like I can't have a world changing conversation if we're just carrying forward the past. And so there's something really important around this.
Mm.
But as you're saying, as we say imagine, right? Like it needs to start from the imagination. There's a lot of
Yeah.
problems that we have right now. I think that like going back to like purpose and that part that's like immovable, it's like where are we actually heading? How can we and what does that actually look like? And how do we build that out there? So I really love that element. Can we play? Well, first I'd love to see
Yeah.
like what your reaction is. Not even your reaction, but I'd love to like extend
Yeah.
this with
I
you and then go through that.
It's so profound. It's like a huge paradigm shift to me to think about not just imagining it for a couple of minutes, but like going, no, like actually stay there and like be in that place. You know, I thought it was radical to think of like, oh, let's imagine it for a second, but that's so radical. Like, what if we were always in? And I think that that's possible because time is not linear. So if we believed, if enough people walked through the world holding the vision of what we know is possible, and we know is possible because, you know, it's where we've come from, or, you know, there's a part of us that just like innately knows it, then it would just be that way. There wouldn't actually have to be much efforting, you know, to create it. I hope that's making a little bit of sense, but I love that idea of like being just staying in the imagination, because that's really all we're doing anyway.
Okay. Right now, we are living someone else's imagined world.
Yes.
We're living many people's imagined world, and I think that's something that became apparent to me actually when I went to the Olympics. I had a chance to go to the Olympics in 2016, and uh, when I got there, I came there and I was wearing like my USA shirt. And all of a sudden, it didn't matter what I looked like, where I was from, like if they knew me or not. If someone else was wearing a USA shirt and they saw me, they're like USA, and like all of a sudden we were part of something that just was huge, and there was actually no connection. And I kid you
Wow.
not,
Wow.
I was walking outside and I was seeing all these places, people from all these different places in the world, and I'm like, oh, it's all made up, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
this whole thing is made up. And it got me thinking about like 100 years ago, the rules and the made up imagined world that they were living in. And 400 years ago, where like we're talking about like America wasn't even a made up thing at that time. You
Yes.
know, it's all imagination, and I think that I
Yes.
think pulling that out uh, is important. Like being in the imagination is not daydreaming. It's in holding that. I mean, to me, I feel like our job is to take the thing that we're imagining and live it day in, day out
Mm.
as much as we can so that we are modeling that future in
Yes.
every single moment that we breathe.
Yes. Mm. That's such a powerful idea, specifically because you're relating it to the Olympics, which is like about the boundaries we create. So yeah, this awesome experience of, if you take just like when you were in the US, you wouldn't be as connected to the other people because of US, because then you're breaking up by like, oh, I'm in New York, you're in Texas, you know, all these, I'm black, you're white. And then as soon as you went into a bigger pool, it was like, oh no, okay, now this is enough of a similarity, so we're connected. So it's like, okay, so if we all just had a world celebration party all the time and we're like, oh, you're a human, I'm a human, what? Oh my God, human, we're connected. Just if that was the only qualifier,
Yeah.
it is the only qualifier.
Well, like let's play this out here. I love this space. Like I'm exploring the concept I'm calling an open inquiry, which is to like really allow the questions to lead us in this conversation, and to not and to like see the questions, because the questions are the things, the path to the new destination. Like to me, what feels like
Mm-hmm.
futuring for me is like the ability to keep asking better and better questions and to spend time in those questions. And imagination right now is really playing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's it's interesting because I'm realizing like in real time, like, oh, this is part of the reason why I show up the way I do and why like I started the business that I did and so forth. What got me when I went to the Olympics was like you were just talking right now about like we created a bigger group. We just like we're like, oh, okay, you know what? The black white thing's not going to work here. Like I'm in another country, and I want to feel connected to others. Let me find what's similar. Okay, USA, great. We're all from like the same country. Here we go. And it messed with me. It messed with me because I was like, I had been working in a company, a tech company, helping people, helping the leaders of different diversity and inclusion groups, and I was like, oh wait, like where like we might be sitting our time on this earth. It might be about racism or sexual orientation or like ableism or so many other social causes, but like it is in it has been like I'm going to say it's in our human nature. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but like for it, humans do this. They find different ways to group and classify people,
Mm-hmm.
and then they find different ways to like they create more I don't say levels and different ways of distributing power, right? So
Mm-hmm.
even in a diverse environment, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything is like on the same level, right?
Yes.
And so that got me thinking. You just said human to human, and it got me thinking about like play this out. Like where does it go? How does this actually work? And not to work against it, but to like if we as humans actually lean like if this is what we do, if we're going to find different groups, like rather than
Mm.
don't do it, it's like what's the powerful way of
Yes.
doing that?
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
let me get your thoughts on that. I'll keep ripping with you.
So there's this really powerful book called The Fifth Insight, which is based on the Celestine Prophecy series. But like the Celestine Prophecy is James Redfield, I think, and it's written as, I haven't read it, but it's fiction. But The Fifth Insight is a nonfiction that kind of explains the book and like the theories and the philosophies of the book. And so there's this one idea that has stuck with me since I read The Fifth Insight, where it's that we all have, before we came to the planet, our soul decided and had an intention of who it was going to meet on this planet, because the soul knew what its mission was, and it was like collaborating with other souls and went, okay, well, if I'm going to come to earth like this, in this type of a family that's going to give me this type of an experience in this type of a country, in this type of socioeconomic status, so that my soul can do its work. And if your soul's work is this, that's kind of related to mine, so we should be a soul family, and we should like, maybe not, we're not going to be born on the same block, but like that we're going to be connected somehow. Let's like set our lives up as best we can now, because we're going to forget as soon as we're born, so that we would interact with one another when we get to the planet. So, you know, that feeling you get when you meet someone, you're just like, oh, I feel like I've known them for years, or like you just kind of get them. The idea would be those are people from your soul family. So our soul family as a grouping, in the book, it talks about how it's kind of organized about like missions. Like maybe your group mission is like to increase cohesion among humans. You know, maybe your group is like to care for the earth, the planet. Maybe your group is like to learn more about health. You know, maybe your group is like supposed to be the protectors of some way of being on earth. Like, you know, that your soul up here. So it's not necessarily like this is all the doctors, but it's like, oh, you all have a similar mission to honor tradition or what. I don't know, you know, this is like silly now, but you hear what I'm saying? Cause I don't know what the soul families would be, but the idea is that it's our souls that are more related or less related and are meant to connect so that we can learn certain lessons, because our soul just is experiencing itself, right? And just wants to like go through and have many different experiences. So how would we, how would we be willing to maybe identify our soul family and then share? If we could connect with our soul family, maybe this is one of the beautiful things about Zoom right now, is that maybe we can connect with people all over the world and get them all in one room at once. Because maybe I have someone in my life that's part of your soul family, right? That you need to connect with. You know, when you do that, when you're like, oh, I met someone and they just have to meet my other friend so-and-so. Maybe that's us recreating soul families on earth. Let's see.
So let's stay with this. I one of the things I love about this space is like we can hold everything at as a potentiality, right? If we're in a space of possibility and imagining, and like let's stay in that space. And this is
Okay.
yeah. So there's an
Yes.
element here that plays out for me where I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, so if we were looking at the place that feels, so firstly, there's an element of like the souls in the soul family that like I've been exploring myself with spirituality. Like I do think when it comes to purpose and such, like really tapping into my like what my soul is here on this earth to do is important. The two things, the things that come up here is like right now I know like my soul's purpose is to champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. And like literally, like my soul I got woken up to that 2 months before coronavirus hit the world. Um, and and it was just like, oh, I thought I had time to get ready for this. Apparently, you meant like now. Now is it like there's an opportunity for this is there's an inflection point, an opportunity for a shift in
Mm-hmm.
humanity. Apparently, we mean now, right? And so there's been this element of like, okay, firstly, like tapping into what is soul's purpose. That element of soul family as well. I like that's been really interesting to me to play out. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, because if you know that you have this, if you're in touch with the fact that your soul is communicating a purpose to you, it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't have support, right? You like none of us, nothing in the physical world is created by ourselves, right? Even when I made this coffee in the morning, someone else planted the beans, someone harvested the beans, someone roasted the beans, someone set up the machine to pull the water from the planet, you know, like, so it doesn't make sense that our souls wouldn't also need certain other souls with certain other gifts in order to enact its purpose. So I just imagine like, oh, what a like sigh of relief that we can kind of all shed that, okay, because I think sometimes when people identify a purpose for themselves, it can become really overwhelming. Because it's like, oh my God, so like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Like, I need to take this class at school. I need to talk to these people. I need to do, you know, wow, it's going to be so much work.
Can I pause real quickly?
Do
Because
it.
I'm you, but I can feel myself leaving, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the places where I leave is when it gets to like some people,
Yeah,
right?
I know. You're so right. So
So yeah,
I love it. I think a lesson that I'm like learning in this moment that I need to be learning is that I could ask for help and I could trust that whatever bigness my mission seems to feel like, if when I get in a sense of overwhelm about the things that I'm supposed to do or what I need to do, I can remind myself somewhere in the world and already connected to me in many ways is a soul family that's literally here to help me do it. That I am supported in doing it. Like I it's not like I don't have to do anything alone. And that is actually very terrifying. That's very scary.
Tell me, just tell me why. Yeah. It's so terrifying. It makes me laugh. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's like shit. So I'd have to like be connected to people and they'd have to like know me and I'd have to like,
All right. Yeah. So like, this is where I'm like, let's slow that roll down a little bit here. Because I feel like you took this element of like I'm connected like on a soul level before I even came onto this earth. I said like agreements with people
oh,
and we were good. And you got to a place where you're like, it makes me feel good that like I'm supported, and knowing that they're out there. And then you're like, wait, but now I have to go do all this other. I'm like, you just took away all
oh
that. Like I'm like the whole point here, like because it's actually really
oh.
you bring this up here. What's going on for you? What's going on for you? I'm hearing and I'm seeing things.
Mm. I'm just like curious about that tentativeness that I'm experiencing. Like I'm just curious about that. Like what's going on with that tentativeness? What is that trying to say to me? Like why? Yeah, that's just a curious. I think it's unfamiliar in this plane because what you said is right. It's not unfamiliar energetically. It's not unfamiliar to my soul, but in my human experience, it's unfamiliar not because it hasn't happened, but because I don't really sink into it.
And just for us right now, if you're going to just sink into it a little, like just like 0.001% more right now, can you just like take that time right
Yeah. I would just be filled with appreciation and gratitude for everything, everyone on my path, and like appreciate that I have been really deeply connected and appreciate I just appreciate everyone. I was just like, wow,
now.
my gosh, so
Cool.
thankful.
Can I pause real quick on that? Because I'm hearing that like this one actually feels like it's possible in this
Mm-hmm.
moment. Would you
Mm-hmm.
like to just take some time real quick to just like get into a place of appreciation? Because I would love like if it is about sinking,
Yeah.
I can be with you in that when we're both more sunk into it, and
Yeah.
then we'll continue our conversation from there.
Yeah. I feel
You don't have to say
so,
it loud. I don't know if you need to say it out loud. It's more about the practice. Like
and
acknowledge that this is it. You need to take some time to appreciate so we can think that a little bit.
so I just feel grateful now. I just feel my heart has expanded more and I feel more like compassionate. I just am like, oh, feel cozy. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Mm.
for me, it's like it's deliberate to when we do this year. Just I'm in an act of like just practicing, right? Going back to this element of like, if we're living in an imagined world, which we are, and we're choosing to go and imagine new possibilities, new futures.
Mm.
I talk about futures distinct from the past, right? It's like we can either work our way towards it or we can be that now.
Yes.
And so like
Yes.
like that's like and to be in it
Yes.
now would be like whatever capacity we have, maybe it's 0.0001% more that, but I would rather be 0.0001% more that in this moment than to spend another 3 months before that 0.00001
Yeah.
shows up, right? And so like that's the element
Mm-hmm.
like the practice that feels that's why I pause there, because
Mm,
it does feel like, okay, let's tap into that. I was actually thinking
mm,
about you the other day. I was thinking about souls because I like when I get lost in my mission, when I start doubting myself. I told you I've been building a lot of infrastructure recently. I've been spending in my mind. I'm like I've been so far away from things. I'm not showing up. I'm not being good people.
mm.
And then like I come on. I'm like, oh wait, Brooke and I had an amazing conversation that was like put on YouTube and like really got into like deep, real stuff around what was meaningful and important there. I haven't. That's not actually the case. But when I spiral, I like
Mm.
I think about like, okay, what's like who's in my world, and I try and tap back into my soul. Can I share two things that come up with me? I didn't
Mhm.
expect to be talking about this, so I'm really happy to just like explore more around.
I
The
love
two
it.
things that you came to my mind specifically 2 days ago, so around the element of like people who have come into my life for a specific reason. I'm like you and I got introduced several months ago, a year ago maybe, and it really could have been. I've been introduced to a number of different people that where it could have just been like, okay, great, like someone put the connection in, we're good, we're moving on. But for some reason, we've just continued to go down the journey with each other, and like when the time came to like step up into a new level of leadership, we both were like, okay, this is it. This is like we're making that path and we're continuing that path.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, there's an element here that like I'm going to invite you to look to me in any ways that I can support as one of the people who
Mm.
maybe we made an agreement beforehand, but like I can also be with you here on choose to support you, and I'm down for that
Yeah.
support. I want to make sure that you know that I'm with you in all.
Mm. I do know that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
You don't have to apologize. We're good. The second thing is we were talking earlier about like it feels like your work might be shifting, and I haven't right now. And this is my own personal belief. Like I'm adopting beliefs that actually continue to support how it is that I feel like my soul's like the work that this is here to do. I'll learn later on about which beliefs were right and wrong. But right now, like the main thing is to actually just continue to stay in service. Um, and one of the things that's played out for me is I talk about my soul's purpose because right now that feels concrete and clear. But I am also the belief that there are like multiple purposes, there are multiple windows for your soul to accomplish various purposes. They're like exit ramps, and they'll take you for a bit, and then maybe you get back on the highway, and you're just like, okay, now I'm on the highway again, and okay, now the purpose is coming to life, or so on and so forth. So I know, and I said it like right now, my purpose is to champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. In 3 years, it might be something different. I'm not tied to like I'm not tied to having this have to be my lifelong mission. What I do know is that right now I am being called to show up, and I don't feel it's just Niyama the person. I feel like my soul is like you are here on this earth to help usher in this new way of humanity. So like show up wherever that is.
Take it further to connect it to this other wisdom you had, which was that if instead of if we're living in this imagined world, what matters is to be the thing. We're just being the thing. So actually, the first, say that purpose again that you're living right now.
I champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity.
So if your purpose was be champion, that was it. If Niyama equals champion, then you would never have to go, and this is for myself too, you'd never have to go through the transition into a new purpose. It's actually not new purpose, because it's not the outcome that is your purpose. I think that that's part of our narrative collectively and in the personal development sphere, that your purpose is like, my purpose is to build a hospital. My purpose is, to champion leaders into the, we get really good on like, this is the outcome I'll know that I've achieved. But like you said earlier, we're actually being the thing. So if we took that into purpose,
if that was the case, then like when you say that, the thing that really shines more than anything else is that like my purpose is to create space, plain and
Wow.
simple. And like I am, and it's different, you know. Uh, I it's different from holding space. It's different from taking space. Like I create space. There was a time earlier here we were talking about the infrastructure, and you had said something that floored me. It took my breath away. I was seated, so I didn't actually land on the floor. But you had said there's like you're noticing the way that I'm showing up about it, and it's getting you to think about things or approach things differently. That to me really hit. The reason that it hit was because I'm like, that's me in my space creation mode, where
Yes.
it's like, oh, this too is also possible for us. This too is also possible for us. Like that's one of the ways that I create space. And so that is, if I was going to boil it down to just like
Yes.
one thing, that no matter what happens, I am constantly creating space.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of different ways to look, but like
I'm
that is,
literally like, I'm like seeing this. So like, give me 1 second.
yep.
Oh, my pen is running out. So if this, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. So here is create space is his purpose. And
Yeah.
then one of the ways he does it is he hosts videos,
Yeah.
hosts conversations, he asks questions, right? We could put you use a bunch of different strategies.
I have so many strategies.
Yes.
It's so interesting because the realization of that as like part of like what I do, and what I'm here for was it came up from a dance. Someone asked me to do a dance break during a conference, and
Yeah.
I just turned it up to an 11, and people were like, the way you led that dance party. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, the way you led it, it was electrifying. And they're like, I felt that I could dance. I felt more comfortable shaking my body because of the way that you were up there. And I was like, oh yeah, like this is what I do. I remembered that I heard that. I remembered that that's how like my life is.
Niyama, what if we're in a soul family whose mission on this planet is to create space?
That would be,
What?
I'm down for that.
What?
I'm very down for that.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. I'm,
That's
I
freaking cool.
yeah. I'm I'm very, very good with that. I think that's it. That's it. Like, and that becomes also the fun part. I think that's it. Especially as I think that's it. Like as a space creator, I'm like I want to have the space to change my purposes and need as needed. I want to find different ways to experiment and bring us together. Like created like imagining is part of that new space that we're looking at and saying like, okay, this space didn't exist beforehand because we were focused on our problems. But if we actually look to what it is that we want to actually bring into the world, how much more space is that? I think that's
Mm.
also the truth when you're talking about the sovereignty elements of it too. Um, that to me feels like creating and holding space where it's like creating your space for yourself where it's like no matter how much other space is taken, this space is mine, you know.
Yes.
So yeah, this is one of the first times I've put it out just that directly, but at the end of the day, that is like at the core of my brilliance. It's like even the principle of this conversation behind it was just like this is a space to not have to have any answers, you know, to come and explore new things. Like it's about it's in the creation of space, and I have a lot of different modalities. Having conversations like this, like there's a number of different ways. I think I get tickled about this. I think I'll actually speak to this in an upcoming because this does feel like it taps into the brilliance of me.
Yes, it is the brilliance of you. And probably if you looked back on all those moments in your life and your history of like when you felt really aligned, you'd probably be able to just say to similar to the dance experience, like, oh yeah, I was creating space. That was like my soul was just resonating and saying, yes, this is what I'm here for. When kids, you know, you want to know what the first, so you're about to have a baby. The first two kind of words, not first words when they're kids, but like that children, as they become sovereign, like become their own beings, start to use the most are no and mine, right? So they start learning that they can like no and no and mine, you know? And so I was thinking about all the things we actually would have to say no to in order to claim mine. And we'd have to say no. And in the past, I've thought about it as like, oh, I'd have to say no to like sleeping in. I'd have to say no to that junk food so that I can have, you know, the healthy body that I want. But it's like, oh, I might have to say no to the system because my soul, what's mine to create in the world, doesn't fit into the system, right? And that's what I think we're seeing collectively. A lot of people are starting to say no to things that we've taken for granted in the system. So we're reclaiming that inner 2-year-old who very easily, without stress, without fear of judgment, learned that they could say no and could say mine. And it's just like this is connecting somehow to me, this idea of how we were as children and then what was taken away from us in our sovereignty as we aged, because we believe we need to be a certain way to fit.
There's an element I like to say is like, I'm no longer childish, but I strive to be childlike. Like,
Yes.
like to be able to, as an adult, learn again how to be a child,
Yes.
so that I can take the elements of that really that would really serve. Not just no, but like the repeated no, or this like or the willingness to ask and ask and ask and ask and ask and ask and ask ask and to just be completely like it's just completely with that, to be able to do that as an adult. I'm like, deep, like how powerful would it be to be able to access that, and now I'm in the space of like treating. I mean, it's the element of, if there's a rhetorical question, answer it. The answer for me here is that the answer is probably, the question is probably not how powerful would it be. I know it would be powerful. Like 12, is that an answer to that? That's not the question. But the thing that comes to me is, yeah, I'm imagining myself and what the world would look like if I and those around me were in a space where we can ask for exactly what we wanted. We were able to claim what is ours, and I think that's like the mine element to me comes to claiming, and that is an important word. I have a distinction around that myself, different than like attracting and receiving and getting. Like claiming is a big, like I'm like claiming each other to be in each other's like sort of family, like claiming to be like, regardless of what we had done up here, like I'm here for you. Like that is a very different element than like sitting back and saying like, hopefully that like the invitation will come. Um,
Yes.
there's something around that element of like, as children we knew how to do it. We said it was mine, and we claimed it. I think that still even ties to the future element. Like this is what I see. I'm going to say no to your system because, and then this is the part that also comes in where it's like, at least for me, it's not what are you going to replace it in, but like what is it to me? What I'm hearing is like, it's like, what's the no that we're saying? What's the thing that we're saying no to, so we can say yes to what it is that we really want?
Yes.
And that part really is important to me. That part is really important to see, like there's so many different problems that we can take on. What are we trying to say yes to, such that, like, I don't know, most of the time I do it like 2 to 3 of those problems just like fall off. Like it's just like that's actually irrelevant in the creation of what it is that's actually ours. What that really be ours.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to be in no, because it's a natural part of our development. We have to start by saying no in order to be able to define and understand what the mine is. I really think that's true.
Keep
Because
going. Keep going. I have a question on this, but keep going.
so
Don't react to me.
yeah, as people start to see what they don't want before they have a vision of what they want. And I guess I'm doing the people thing, but I do have a personal example that's like, that is in my head. I wanted to do the MBA program. I wanted to go into business, which I ended up doing anyway, but I went into this MBA, and then there was so much no for me there. Like, I would be sitting in class and I'd be like, why the fuck are we talking about this? This isn't real. This is fucking bullshit. And I would just be so uncomfortable. And it was just such a no, like reverberating in my body, like, no, no, no. But it took a while to get to, okay, so what instead? So I stayed in that no. I knew it was a no, like in every five. And I think this happens in relationships too, right? People have to have, well, I do want to say people, but I get it. I do this, like, I also am conscious that I'm not trying to other it. But I think because I work with people so much and I see this.
I'm with you. Like
you know what I mean? Like, I've observed this phenomenon.
If you're making a conscious choice about it, then let's go it out. Like,
yeah. So my observation about the world, which I will claim, anything I see in the world is really just my experience. So take that as the summary, and then I'll speak otherly, but I know that it's, people get into a relationship and then it doesn't work. So they find out that that's a no. That person has a quality that's a no for me. This thing about that type of relationship is a no for me. But it's only through a few of those no's that our new definition of desire comes about, right? So I think about people who grow up in alcohol, like with alcoholic parents. They don't know when they're a kid that they want to live in a healthy, safe home, but they experience so much shit that then they go, if they evolve and have other, people come around and show them other possibilities, they go, no, I'm not okay with that. And then they go, I'm not going to drink when I have children. Or they go, they make new yeses. They claim new things for themselves. I claim a healthy home. I claim healthy relationships. I claim positivity, whatever that becomes, right? But I can't think of something that I've claimed for myself that I don't know the opposite of, or I don't have an experience of something that I had to say no to, but I can't imagine the no about. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
I want to be wrong. Give me the counter example.
Let's see here. So I think that there's two things. I get curious right now, and I don't know the answer, and I like the fact I don't know it. I get curious about like whether that's just like if that's an opportunity and a muscle that we get a chance to build, right? Because part of my issues with challenge with taking on social injustice and other types of injustice here is that the focus tends to be on what we don't want. That's my experience about it. With the conversations that light me up, the things that get me out of bed, moving when I know like what is it that we do want, and how are the things that what we do want, what are some of the things that are impeding that? What are some of the barriers towards what it is that right? Like, this is I told you earlier, I felt like I was behind on conversations, and I was like, am I really showing up? There was a really like a national conversation taking place around defund the police, and I felt like for me there was an element of like I couldn't find the places where people were talking about what it is that they wanted, such that like the funds would be used in other places, right? And I feel like eventually I started to hear about like because I remember my reaction to it right away. I was like, "Ooh, hold on, this like no, like people aren't going to go for this, like do they need to go here? Like that's radical." And then when people started sharing like some like radical new imaginations as to like what the world could look like, what their country could look like, and like a new role for police and such, I was like, oh, I'm so down for that. Like that, it's an aspect of could we imagine what it is that we actually wanted? And something, so I think it also works in like, I think there's an element that works in the opposite way, like where it's like until you know what it is that you really want, sometimes you don't recognize what it is that like isn't getting you,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know? That's
That's
what that,
beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. And as you were saying that, I'm like, oh, I know the counterexample. Like you just brought it up for me in that one. And then also, Obama and Trump's elections, both were based on where we're going, right? So we have the Hope campaign from Obama, and then we had Make America Great from Trump. And the reason why I believe that Trump will get reelected is because his opposition, instead of saying, this is where we're going, is saying you don't want Trump. So is giving a no. And it's really hard. And, we can observe as masses and collectives that we don't really get behind no's, as it's not as exciting to get behind it. We get behind no's because we go defund the police and but it doesn't get us, like, we're not as active about our no's, maybe.
yeah, the absence of something is not actually having it,
Yeah.
right? The absence of something does not actually get us what it is that we're looking for.
Yes.
I think that's one of the big things for me in terms of looking at like we were talking earlier about leadership and where does leadership like sit. Accountability is big for me. Like there's in a lot of different ways I don't trust leaders as until I see how they show up when it comes to accountability.
Yeah.
Uh, that's one of the things that's like if you want the privilege of leading me, I'm good to be led myself. If you want the privilege of leading me, I want to know how you are showing up,
Yeah.
especially when it when the confrontation comes, especially when it feels like we fall out of alignment or out of agreement or out of integrity. Like how do you show up from that perspective?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
there. I think that is to me that it's part of the reason why I'm experimenting with different ways of bringing us together and keeping our mind on possibility, keeping our mind on like who are we
Yes.
being? I mean, what do we really stand for? What is that purpose? And then bringing it into today's world because it's like there's just something about that like what we stand for, what is it that is going to be the compass that we use to help us make all of our decisions. We are in a very uncertain time. Like, got it. I don't know when life has been certain, but like, we got it. We're like, you know, uh, and the things for me around that is like when you reach deep, deep uncertainty, and I'm going to say the second person you, but I'll use it for myself. What I found out from this is like if you don't know what the answer, like if you can't have certainty, right? Then the ability to know, like this is where the sovereignty becomes so important to me, where it's like to know what your direction is, to not be directionless. Wherever your destination will be, as long as you're aligned with the direction, you'll get there or beyond.
Mhm. Mhm.
Your ability to be collaborative, to be with others.
Mhm.
The amount in an uncertain world, things change so quickly that if you're trying, this is why I specifically create events that don't have people bringing in answers because I'm like, you don't know,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
you don't know, I don't know. All I know is you don't know.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
about it,
Mhm.
right? And so, but the idea of like, but we can figure this out. Like we can see what might be
Mm.
working, what has been working. When did that stop working? It was working yesterday, but it wasn't working today. It was working this morning, but it didn't work this afternoon. What were the conditions around that? Like that element of us being able to collaborate and be with each other from that perspective, I think like that also plays out tremendously in an
Mhm.
uncertain.
Yeah, that's your unique, the amalgamation of your modality, which is to create space. And when I hear that, I hear again that connection to sovereignty because it's like in expertise culture, I go to somebody to give me knowledge or give me a solution, which is very disempowering and is very not spacious, right? Because I've gone there because they know something. But if both people or all people are showing up in curiosity and this, like, okay, what might we want to create together or what could be possible? Wow, how much more empowering for all of us. that's the modality that you're building around. That is the mission, is the purpose itself, is the being, is the creating space.
Yeah. And like that's for me, that's really it. It's like everything that someone's about, I'm like, I should be experiencing it now. And
Yes.
like how like on
Yes.
like 0.0001% level, like what is so we're in alignment with that in this moment. I'm a champion, full stop. Right. I also champion the leaders who
Story of a champion. Dun,
ah,
dun, 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 dun.
so there's like this element that comes through where I'm like, what does that look like in this conversation? What does that look like when like two people who feel like we would recognize that there's a connection that is continuing them along the various journeys can be in a conversation with one another, and know like it's like and then be able to say like I'm like, hey, do you mind if I record this here? And you're like, absolutely, let's go. Like, and it's interesting to me because I'm like, I don't need to have the answers. I don't need to come out and say, this is how we're doing it. This is what it looks
Yes.
like. Let's pull out this takeaway. Don't forget to think about this, so on and so forth.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
but like it's in the interaction
Yes.
that's there. It's in the new things that are being.
Yeah. And like the feeling I'm leaving with is, oh man, I got work to do. Let's get this good going. Like this exciting, enthusiastic, like, okay, like it's a replenishing of my own yes. Like, oh, okay, like I can get going. I'm going. It's like both like a trust that like I am doing it, and also like a, okay, so let me just keep doing it without having to think. Like it kind of takes me out of um what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And I'm just like re-energized with like, I'm doing it. I'm being it.
It. That is like, look, I appreciate you bringing it to that. I really do appreciate you bringing it to that because that's it. We're playing infinite games. We've chosen to play an infinite game, something that may not be done in our lifetime, and that
Yes.
when we are done and when we leave this earth here, we are going to pass it on to other people who are going to take on and do things in their ways, right? And so
Mm.
that element there, like the element of having the energy to sustain the energy you is massive, you
Yes.
know. So I'm like, it puts
Mm.
some.
Well, that's the accountability piece, like in leadership. Actually, because what I do and the energy I show up with affects other people, I kind of have to. And part of being a leader and being accountable is taking care of myself,
Oh yeah,
and the one that just fucking gets me, Yana, that I've just been like about, this uh, new book by Trump's, is it his cousin, this female psychiatrist?
yep,
And people are like, and I'm just like, he had a traumatic childhood, and like the man is just living out his trauma. So it's like, duh. Like I'm not freaking surprised here. Like, write a book about it. But then it's like, we cannot accept that of our leaders. I can have compassion for him that he experienced that. But if you are stepping into a leadership role, you have to clean your own vessel. You have to be taking care of yourself. You don't have to be healed, right? You don't have to have had no trauma, have gone to therapy for 10 years. I don't need that, but I need you to fucking own that I'm not whole, because none of us are whole, because we've all been traumatized and had things happen to us. The responsibility of a leader, if you're going to set, kind of what you said, if you're going to lead me, I need to see how you're being. I'm like, if you're going to lead me, I have to see that you're doing the work and that you own that you're broken. That's, to me, like, that's what's driving me crazy about this. I'm like, I'm totally okay with him having gone through pain. I'm not okay with him not growing through pain if he's going to be in a leadership role. And that's goes for all leaders. This one gets me friggin' fired up.
that's it. Like, and I'm gonna also go with this here. I'm gonna give like as we wrap up this conversation. I think like uh, there's an element here of stay fired up, you know, and also go to the replenished energy. I like the fired up sounds really cool. I'm like, oh yeah, hell yeah, let's go. But I also am like, I need you to also stay in the game. We talked this whole thing of like to start out here,
Yes.
and burnout just like shows up, right? You are creating something. You're creating a vision of the world that the world hasn't necessarily seen, right?
Yes.
That the world may not actually necessarily believe is possible, right?
Yes.
You know it's possible, but they may not know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, like, okay, how do we make sure that as you're going through, you're burning that good, clean
That good, clean energy. Oh, I love that. That's
energy?
good.
Yeah. So how do we go through that good clean energy? So I want to like the energy that the place you're coming from, we were feeling replenished, the place we were looking at, and you're looking at the possibilities, and that was open up,
Hmm.
going back to where the space actually is, right?
Absolutely.
That
Yes.
level of graciousness.
Yes. Yes. It's
We
a
were,
good
we were
discipline.
absolutely. We were going back and forth with a couple different books that came up. There's one book that I didn't mention that I think that you're going to see. It's actually influenced me tremendously. It's called Community: The Structure of Belonging by Peter
Oh.
Senge.
Oh, I
Um,
know Peter. I know his work, but I
yeah,
haven't read that yet.
that
Cool.
book, that book, that book has been what I've been like. It takes the work that I do with individuals in a one-on-one setting around power and around like owning themselves and brings it into a community environment. How do we collectively do this? If I work with people individually to say, what's your vision? It's about like, how do we bring a collective of people together? And honestly, it's what has been one of the biggest drivers of what I do. It's about like questions are more powerful than answers. Questions, small groups,
Beautiful.
so on and so forth. So you'll see that work come out through some of the things that I do.
Oh, I'm excited for that. Keep
Yeah,
doing it from that replenished
we're talking
energy.
about today, not fit in there. Like the whole model the world that
Awesome.
you want to see, that's where it comes from.
Yes.
I'm gonna see this.
Beautiful. My friend. Thank you.
I love to like create some transition time for us. So I'm gonna just end this here and just like we can have like a minute. I'll talk to you for a second. All right.
Hey, Oniyama here. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, and then go ahead and leave one of your insights from today's video in the comments below. If you're looking to take this deeper, you can go and watch another video, or you can go to niyama.com/tribe to get exclusive invitation to our tribe member only events. I'll see you soon.